have Dr. Mitch Rosenwald, candidate for Oakland Park City Commission. Dr. Rosenwald, Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. We're all getting used to sitting at our tables, right? And I'm actually very happy I put this new lectern I have, so the laptop can be on top. So I'm kind of excited about that, but I'm doing very well. How are you?
Fine, fine, fine. Welcome to the Broward Social Network. Mitch, talk to us first and foremost about the elephant in the room. Talk to us about COVID-19. I might have mentioned to you, I personally lost 3 family members from COVID-19, and we are all trying our very best to withstand this pandemic. How has COVID-19 impacted you and your city?
Thank you. Well, first I want to extend my condolences to you, Ted. I'm very sorry to hear that. I fortunately, COVID has not impacted my family. I do have friends. One friend was dating someone who passed away, and I'm a professor of social work down at Barry University, and a few of my students have been impacted. In fact, I just finished teaching a class, and one of my students' mother passed away maybe a month or so ago. So it impacts everybody, with the health and unfortunately the illness and the passing away. In the city, Oakland Park is part of Broward County. We know in Broward County that it's hitting Broward and Palm Beach and Miami pretty hard. Miami the hardest of all of Florida, so much so that we have been the last to do a slow reopening. As of yesterday, the Broward County Commission met, and there's going to be a resolution drafted, I believe today will be the announcement, or tomorrow, I'm not positive, about this coming Monday and what a slow reopening looks like. So we can take a look for that. In the city, there's been a massive need for food distribution, a real need for mask distribution. I've been part of those efforts along with many, many volunteers. I'd say those are the 2 big things: food distribution and mask distribution. The other piece in the city of Oakland Park, our volunteer director did a great thing. He came up with a phone buddy system. And so I'm a buddy to someone who's been impacted emotionally by COVID. As we all know, we're more isolated, at least physically now. And so there's more people that are in distress. And so this is a volunteer program that helps with, comforting people in times of need. So, COVID has not hit my immediate family. Fortunately, has not hit my immediate family, fortunately, but has impacted people I know and, professionally as well. And that the city, and the county, I think, are poised, have done a really phenomenal job of addressing the needs. Look at Broward County, what they did with the cruise ships, right, that were off, that had no place to be. They were like these, I hate to say it, like a death ship, basically, and people couldn't get off and nobody would give them port. And so in a very safe way, they allowed them to, they addressed that issue a few weeks ago.
Okay, well, as you know, we are on the internet. We're doing this live, and this is going to be accessible to all of the residents of Broward County and really the entire world. Talk to us very briefly. What are the geographical boundaries of Oakland Park? Talk about the location of your city and also talk about the demographics of your city.
Sure, thank you, Ted. So Oakland Park, the city of Oakland Park, it's going to be 100 years old in a few years. And it's in the east central part of Broward County. So it's right by Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, Wilton Manors, and Lauderdale Lakes. And let's see, the boundaries are Federal Highway, Route 1 to the east, pretty much 31st Avenue West, northwest. And it's Oakland Park Boulevard, a little bit south of there, but Oakland Park Boulevard. And then it kind of varies between Prospect, Commercial, and Cypress Creek. So again, it's in the eastern part of the county, sort of in the central part, basically between Fort Lauderdale and Pompano. And Yeah, it's about 46,000 people. The median age is around a little younger than me. I'm 49, so I think it's maybe 40. You have to check like 40, 45 or 47, something like that in the 40s. And demographically, in terms of race, it's around Caucasian is about a half Caucasian or so, about a quarter African American or Caribbean American, and about a quarter Hispanic. And you have new people that have moved in. It actually has a fairly large LGBT population. It has people that have lived here for many years. Politically, I think it's 2-to-1 Democrat. You know, you have a lot of people who are, you know, are professionals with college degrees. You have a lot of others who are professionals with trade degrees, a good amount of retirees. And so those are some of the demographics of the city. We have 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 3 elementary. We also have an alternative high school, an alternative school.
I'm glad you mentioned the schools, because as a fellow educator, I'm an educator as well, just as yourself. You're at the college level, I'm at the high school level. We'll talk about education and the impacts of COVID-19 on what's going on with education. Dr. Rosenwald, Mitch, the purpose of this interview is to let the constituents know a little bit more who you are. You're already active in the community, and this will be an even additional opportunity for the voters to say, you know what, this is the gentleman I want to vote for. This is the gentleman I would want to represent me. Talk about why you're running. Talk about why you're running and why should the people vote for you. I want them to get to know who is Mitch Rosenwald.
Great. Thank you so much again for this opportunity, Ted, for Broward Social Network.
Absolutely.
So deep down, I'm a social worker, and I want to make a change and make a difference in my community. I've been fortunate to be a professor of social work at Barry University for 13 years. I have lived in Oakland Park for
Go Barry, by the way, as an alum, go Barry, go Barry.
Too, the Buccaneers.
Thank you.
And
The
really
Pirate.
some great national championships for Division II. Really quite a lot actually at Barry.
Right.
So we share that in common. And so as a social worker, I want to make a difference. Some social workers do like therapy. I've done that before, but other social workers are very involved in, say, community organizing and activism to help think of your city as, you know, helping empower the city to be as best as it can. And so I'm running because I have the leadership and the experience to do that. Some of my leadership experiences are am the president, the founding president of a neighborhood association, the Corals of Oakland Park Neighborhood Association, and also am the president of the Neighborhood Coalition of Oakland Park. In that role, recently, because many meetings have stopped, of course, and based on the pandemic, I started what's called the Oakland Park Community Check-in, which I think is how you found me. This is meeting every Saturday at 10 a.m. Now it's going to be on the Oakland Park Community Check-in group. And this is basically an education and support community for those in Oakland Park who live in Oakland Park, who visit Oakland Park, so it can be anybody, right? And to business owners. And the purpose is to provide guest speakers on an array of topics. We've had the mayor on, we've had the vice mayor on, we're having the fire chief this coming Saturday, Steve Kravanek, who's the emergency services director, to give information, knowledge, resources for people. And they can ask questions and do comments through Facebook. And then after that, we just do general information about like food, feedings, like there's one a collaborative between Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, and Oakland Park through Feeding South Florida. We do that weekly. So we update people on resources, and then it's really a source of support as a social worker. You know, we need community right now. Our sense of physical community has been fractured. It's been fractured. We've been fractured, but we're not in a coma. We've just been fractured, and through a community, how can we continue to have constant sources of hope, inspiration, knowledge, etc. And so that's what you need in crisis, is you need leaders who can provide information, guidance, and bring people together. So those are some of my experiences in the city, and also in terms of leadership. I'm the past president excuse me, of the National Association of Social Workers for Florida. That organization was over 5,800 social workers. And so I oversaw an executive director and a board of 18 people who had their own units around the state. So I have experience, executive experience, in terms of doing evaluations for the executive director, budgeting, mobilizing, coming up with program and agendas and vision. So these are some of the leadership skills and experience that I am going to be bringing as a commissioner with voters vote me in November.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I ran for commissioner as well in my city of Pembroke Pines. And if I'm putting you on the spot, it says you're putting on the spot. Okay. We all know that one does not need a title to be a leader. It seems as though you're doing a lot for the community already. Why run for commissioner? That is such a hard job. You're signing up for people to throw darts at you. If they are not able to pay their light bill, if they're not able to pay the water bill, if they're evicted, if they've lost their jobs, they're going to come to you. Why assume such a humongous responsibility? Now, mind you, I'm doing the same thing as well. So go ahead.
Well, to be honest, I've always have enjoyed government. I've always enjoyed politics. Did I ever think I'd run for office when I was a child or a teenager? Or frankly, even maybe 10 years ago, I thought about it. But I've always loved government and politics. I have a master's degree in sociology. I have a master's and doctorate in social work. I teach social policy courses at the master's and doctoral level. So I'm very interested in government. I'm very interested in policy. I'm interested in critical thinking and making sure that policies are equitably distributed. I'm aware of what we call privilege and oppression and how some people get more and some people get less in an array of platforms. So I actually, believe it or not, I have a love of it. And, you know, as a social worker, well, even as a professor and, you know, as an educator like you, I've had students come to me with complaints. Certainly as a social worker, I used to do, not in Florida, I did in the Baltimore, Maryland area. I used to investigate child abuse and neglect. I would be the one that would knock on people's doors. And this was before there were, I hate to say cell phones, there were pagers. This was the time of pagers. And I would knock on people's door who did not want to see me because I was the county, meaning I was-
You worked for DCF?
Yes, but in Maryland, not in Florida. Yeah.
Okay. And the equivalent, the equivalent.
Yeah. So I was the equivalent here in Broward of working for Broward Sheriff's Office. They're not all, I mean, obviously there's police officers who work for BSO, but when it's investigations, you may know this as an educator, there's social workers and non-police officers who they do the investigations. If there's a criminal piece, the police officer handles that, but we're the ones that go to court, look at what's called safety plans, try to reunify the children and parents as long as it's safe. If not, we try to keep the families intact, you know, and have the parents do their whatever they need to do. And if not, then we try to find, you know, safe homes. So I have experience of people, I guess, throwing darts at me. That's about the toughest job, believe it or not, is nobody wants you to show up and say, what do you mean you're accusing me that I hit my child or that I'm neglecting my child? So I think I did develop some thick skin for that. But I agree with you. There's going to be some people who disagree with me and people that are my friends who will disagree with me at times or neighbors, and that's all part of it. But I think as long as you are transparent, if you're truthful, and if you explain the rationale for your decision after listening to as many people as possible, then I not a politician in office yet, but I hope that many will understand where you're coming from.
Is this your first time running?
And see, that's part of it too. This is not my first time running. So okay. I have run twice. When I ran so in terms of thicker skin, when I ran 4 years ago, there were 9 of us. And guess where Mitch came in? 9, because I wasn't known. Right. And I said, okay, I had support. You're getting your feet wet. You ran yourself.
Right. I came in last as well. So it's essentially, in my humble opinion, an election is a popularity contest. If they know you, they will vote for you.
people do want to get to know you. And so
Right.
I ran 2 years ago, and there were 2 seats open, so the top 2 people, and I garnered almost 3,000 votes. And the person who's a seated commissioner now received around 3,600. So I was about 600 or so votes, 650 votes shy.
What is the population of your city?
It's about 46,000 people. There's around
Okay.
20,000 voters.
Okay, well, we're going to aim to reach all of those 46,000 to say vote for Mitch Rosenwald on the election date is in November, on November 3rd, correct?
Yes, sir. So my trajectory is going up. I went from 9 out of 9 to 3rd out of 5, and here we are. So.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit, even though you've done so already, talk to us about your extensive training. My goodness, it's kind of like your brain is on overdrive. Your CV is a book. Talk to us, even though this is meant to be a short informal interview, talk to us about your professional training and your work experience a little bit more, because I believe you're going to bring all of that to the commission, all of the wealth of knowledge, the experiences that you've had. And you talked about child abuse before, and I'm going to very carefully probably not talk about that now, because we're going to have to do a different segment on that, because as an educator, being in the classroom for 20 years, we definitely need leadership on protecting kids. So, I applaud you for even having done that already. So talk to us about your professional training, because I do want the constituents in Oakland Park to know that you are serious, you are prepared, and you can intellectually lead the city of Oakland Park.
Sure, thank you. I'll be super brief. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology and economics.
We're from where? From Maryland?
It's a school called Salisbury University. It's one of the state schools in Maryland. I then went and was going to get a doctorate. I ended up just getting a master's in sociology from Syracuse University in New York. And I then did some work actually with conflict resolution programs in Maryland. I was trained with, doing like, peace education and things like that. How do you bring people together at the elementary, middle, and high school level? So I worked on that. Following that, I ended up getting a master's degree in social work from University of Maryland in Baltimore, and really worked with from youth in middle and high schools who have behavioral issues all the way up to geriatric. And following getting my master's, I worked again in child welfare, child abuse and neglect investigations. I worked with geriatric and Jewish Family Services, a private nonprofit. We have it down here in Florida too. And worked doing therapy, advocacy, helping seniors stay in their home, what's called aging in place. So I do have some expertise in gerontology as well. And have my license, had it in Maryland, have it in Florida, and I've done extensive individual and group therapy. And so I have a real understanding of mental health, and I can diagnose. And so certainly with COVID, I understand. I can't fully understand what everybody's going through, but I have a good sense of how people emotionally, even neurologically, respond to trauma, because we're all going through a collective trauma right now. Let's just put language to it. And
that's correct. That is correct. Collective trauma is well stated. Correct.
So I've been a professor. I was at State University of New York at Binghamton in upstate New York for 3 years. I've been at Barry for 13, finishing 13 next month, so 16 years as an educator. But I've worked part-time as well down here. I've done a private practice. I have some expertise in oncology. I worked at Gilda's Club in Fort Lauderdale, working with groups with men with cancer. I've volunteered at SunServe, which focuses on working with LGBT community. I volunteered at Broward Partnership for the Homeless, obviously on Sunrise, helping those who are homeless, and have been a guardian ad litem down here. So those are the extra set of eyes on cases, child welfare cases, all in Broward. And have just done a lot of volunteering, and now I've turned my volunteer work towards the city of Oakland Park, being a volunteer core member here. And creating some organizations and community-based organizations to help people, to help build community and help really build community, increase people's knowledge. And that's really the biggest thing I'm about, is building community. So those are some of my, that's my professional experience in a nutshell. I have been fortunate. I worked on a federal grant with Kids in Distress Agency, a child welfare and housing grant. I have published, I have a few books on conflict resolution and foster care, 2 different books, and a number of published articles and chapters on those topics. So just got an article published last week on child welfare. So that's it's this, I think, breadth of knowledge about human beings, as we say, from cradle to grave, or even bereavement afterwards. The human experience, I'm very interested in professionally, obviously, and I'm licensed. I'm a licensed social worker. So I think bringing my level of knowledge of human experience and how do we help people at all levels, what we call micro, the agency and the community level, to government, to the city commission, is, I think, is very valuable. I ask voters and residents to consider my idea that it would be good to have a social worker on the city commission.
I do not disagree with you at all. Mitch, talk to us about your platform. Talk to us about the unique needs of the city of Oakland Park. As you know, I'm not a big fan of barriers and, this is your city versus my city. I'm more of universal needs, and we are seeing the silver lining in the COVID-19 pandemic, whereby we see that we have much more needs in common as opposed to your needs versus my needs. However, talk to us about your platform for your campaign, and what are some of the unique needs in Oakland Park? What needs to be addressed in Oakland Park versus Pembroke Pines?
Absolutely. Well, so Oakland Park's around in the middle, maybe a little under the middle when you look at the populations. Your city, Pembroke Pines, we were talking before the broadcast, is actually, people don't always know this, I think it's Hollywood or Coral Springs, but it's actually Pembroke Pines is the 2nd largest city in Broward after
Fort Lauderdale.
I just learned that, a couple years ago myself. Oakland Park's around 46,000, so we're around the middle, maybe a hair under the middle or so. And, all candidates have platforms, but the first platform is continuing to address this pandemic. Let's just start where we need to start. November 3rd is the election. November 4th, the pandemic is still going to be here.
Right.
Dr. Fauci, I think we all know who he is, the federal chief doctor, infectious disease expert.
At the NIH, yes.
The NIH has said that a vaccine, he said there's not going to be a vaccine here in the fall. Right. Not at all. You hear about next spring, there's some promising treatments, but the pandemic's going to be here one way or the other. And to the extent of how we still social distance with a rollout Monday, right, of Broward opening will depend, and really nationally will depend how much it's with us still, but it's going to be with us. So I think any candidate and as elected, any elected official needs to take that, right, needs to address that before anything else.
Needs to spearhead it, because I think we were talking about it before the broadcast. There's possible some rumors about schools still not opening up in August.
Yeah. So I have no knowledge of that. Obviously for Florida, California, I believe, I just saw the news. I believe the governor has said California will have virtual school in the fall. Barry University, which is in Miami Shores, it's a private university. We're not sure about the fall either. So I think as a city commissioner, what I'm going to do day one, November 4th, as soon as I'm sworn in, is to really talk with the city manager and talk with residents about what we need to do to continue to address this pandemic. One thing that I've noticed is that the city is really relying on its volunteer corps. And I think that and I'm a member, I think the volunteer corps we need to think of ways to really market that volunteer corps, to really increase it. Because there's a lot of, like, I'm a licensed social worker. There's physicians who live in this city. I don't think we fully have tapped the the residents of Oakland Park for volunteer opportunities to the extent that more people can do things, but I think they can. So I think that's actually one area I'd like to address. Also, we have a terrific emergency management director, our fire chief, Steve Kravanek. And I think what we don't have is an advisory council. We don't have an advisory council to the emergency management director, the emergency management team. I think we all know every city has its own emergency response team, but there's no advisory council. And I think constituting an advisory council, which would have to come from the city commission, then you'd have to fill it with some residents, with some business owners, just so, you know, I'm not saying they're the end result of the decision making, but that they can advise on things relating to food, on things relating to housing, on things relating to healthcare, on issues relating to business. I think that could be a more direct link. And so the creation of an advisory council for the emergency management team would be useful. And thirdly, you know, we're gonna have to make really address head on the financial piece. We don't, well, I'm not on the commission yet, so I'm not privy to everything, but I certainly look at the commission, you know, the commission at this point virtually and all the information. We don't have yet a handle on all of our lost revenues because it's been about 2 months. You know, people still are getting permits, but permitting is down. So there's, you know, we have to get a good handle of what is our revenue and what are our costs. Now, right now, you probably may know, Ted, and some of the people watching may know, and some may not know, that federally, there has been a real plea from governors, Republicans and Democrats alike, I think from every governor, frankly, to ask the federal government's given trillions of dollars for unemployment and the $1,200 checks and all of that stuff. There hasn't been anything yet to reimburse state and local governments.
Right, because you guys, I'm speaking to you like as if you're commissioned already. You guys are going to take a hit. The city's going to take a hit because with no jobs comes no taxes. With no taxes comes no revenues, right?
Absolutely, and I don't think it's quite that dire. I mean, we're going to have some revenue. There are still some home sales, but I was just talking to someone yesterday who has access to the home sales. He's a realtor, and in the past 2 months, obviously it's down. People are still buying homes, but yeah, revenue is certainly down. So we need to, from the financial perspective, we're going to have to take a look at, what can we do? Is there assistance from the county? But then the county's going to want assistance from the state. This is how this all trickles down. We might want to look into some grants that the city might be able to attain. One issue is that we're under 50,000 people. What I learned is we were talking earlier about the census. So I think everyone knows the census.
Very important, very important, very, 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 very important. Whoever's listening to this, and I'm going to, pardon me for interrupting you, but census is very, very important. We are going to do here at the Broad Social Network presentation on it. We've done it in Creole. We're going to do it in Spanish. We're going to do it in Portuguese. And I just need everybody to make sure that you go out to fill out your census so that your city, particularly your household, can receive the due needed resources. And now that I've rudely interrupted you, Dr. Rosenwald, I just want to tell you that you have a major shout out from social media from Dr. Carlene Escobar Naranjo. She says, congrats, Dr. Rosenwald. As a fellow social worker, I fully support your candidacy for commissioner in Oakland Park. My best, Fabio Naranjo, PhD, MSW. So therefore you have support from the community.
I know, how are you, Fabio?
Carlene Escobar.
Thank you so much. So yeah, so the census is about, it's not just, I'm in Oakland Park, Ted, you're in Pembroke Pines, those who are watching are in, wherever in Broward or probably beyond. The census is very important nationally because it brings two things. It brings more dollars to us and it brings potentially more federal representation. And when you have more federal representation, that's typically a good thing for the state. So many grants that are available federally are available to cities if they have 50,000 people or more. Oakland Park has about 46,000. So we have about I think it was a 55% response rate from a few days ago. The census has been extended through December, but we're really wanting to count every single person. And really all of you watching, please answer the census. If your baby is a day old, you can count the child. If your mother-in-law is now, say, living with you, or your cousin is now living with you, you can count that person. And there's no citizenship question. So if someone is undocumented, you can count them. So as long as you're a human being and you're living in the house for an extended period of time with a heartbeat, you can be counted. So it helps the cities, but then it also, there's a whole formulas, which I'm not going to pretend I know them offhand because I don't, but there's formulas that, take it to the state and then trickles it to the city and counties. And then there is some projection that Florida will gain an additional US representative after the census. So very important. Yeah.
Talk to us. I really have, I'm going to ask you a question, but the next question is really what I want to get at very, very quickly, because it's not that important. Talk to us about your ethnicity, because people may be curious. Here in South Florida, I say we are in Latin America. So you can pass for my light-skinned cousin. So talk to us very quickly about your ethnicity. And then I want to talk about, my real question is, I want to hear your ideas on sanctuary cities. How do you feel about Oakland Park being a sanctuary city? Because when we talk about the census, we have to talk about those who are documented and who are not documented, because those are all conversations around being counted. So first, very quickly, what is your ethnicity, racial identity, which is not that important? And then talk to us about your philosophy on a sanctuary city, or Oakland Park being considered to be potentially a sanctuary city if it isn't already a sanctuary city.
So I am white. I know I can pass for different ethnicities. In fact, I've been racially profiled before.
Really?
I know I have. When I've worn, I like this, right? But when I wear a hood in younger years, I was more scruffy or scraggly with my beard. But I would like have a hood because I was going to Canada from New York or whatever. I had a hood. Also, I was in Philadelphia one time late at night walking. And yeah, I know what I can't know what it's fully like, but I have been stopped and questioned, and one time, not body searched, but my car was searched.
That's very interesting. A white man in America who's racially profiled. That is interesting.
So I am white. I'm from Maryland, and my lineage is from Poland. Mostly I'm Polish, Jewish, and about 25% Latvian. So basically Eastern European Polish. So yeah, so think about the question you just said. It's a good question about sanctuary cities, and what I just said and what the federal census says about counting someone who's undocumented. It's interesting. Depending where you are ideologically, you're either undocumented or you're illegal. So if we're counting people as undocumented for the census, right? And the federal government has even said this. If it's important enough to count them, right? And if it's important enough that even President Trump said free COVID testing for COVID for anybody who's undocumented, if they're important enough for that, right, then we should provide some support for them. So I'm definitely open to that discussion. Oakland Park, to my knowledge, has not ever even had that discussion as a sanctuary city that I can recall, but I'm definitely open to that. Because, I feel like many people, I think America's kind of split on this. I don't think someone who's undocumented, who has, violent crime history belongs here. But for people who are, particularly for children like DACA, right? The deferred arrival children, that I believe they didn't come here through any fault of their own. They were born here. Now they're 30 years old or 20 years old, and we need to support them. And these are, talking about the pandemic, these are some of our essential workers. We know.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. And we have Commissioner Jay Schwartz, who is participating on this live meeting from Pembroke Pines. Welcome, Commissioner Jay Schwartz. Happy to have you with us. And I'm glad that you used that word. I don't know if I had this conversation with you, so please forgive me. I am not comfortable with that word, essential versus non-essential. There's no such thing as non-essential. There's just no such thing because and oftentimes we are what we do, right? So if you tell somebody that they're not essential, what you're saying to them is that they really don't bring that much value to your company. So let's just say that you can make it through the day fine without that particular employee. But when that employee is not receiving that salary, what about their bills? Those bills are essential. What about their kids that they need to feed? Those kids are essential. There's no such thing, even though I understand the terminology in the context of what you're talking about. But whoever's listening, President of the United States, elected officials, for those of you who are in decision makers, there's no such thing as non-essential. There's no such thing as non-essential. Everybody has value. I always say everybody is somebody. So I, this is your interview. Maybe you need to interview me on that because I get kind of riled up and I'm losing my cool a little bit. But we are all essential. If we weren't essential, we wouldn't be here. The divine universe decided to bring us here. Everybody's important. Everybody has a purpose. So please, sorry for interrupting.
No, I hear your perspective. What I'm trying to get at is that undocumented human beings who are undocumented are more required to physically show up and work wherever they may work than people like you or me who are still getting, fortunately, salaries. Right. And because we're both educators, so we can do this from our table. They can't do their work from the table.
Unfortunately.
They're doing physical labor. And so if we're relying on them to do physical labor, right, and we're paying them and we're testing them for free, even President Trump said that, and we're counting them for the census, I think that, that's those data points, if you will, are if Oakland Park was to have a discussion of sanctuary city, these are things we need to think about. Yeah.
All right. Talk to us about any endeavors for food distribution in your city, because folks, I don't know if somebody's keeping a tally of how many unemployed people are in Oakland Park and how many people have tested positive. I'm curious how many people have died. Are there any hotspots in or around Oakland Park? We have vulnerable populations such as the elderly. Talk to us about how is the city addressing people who are in need? Because I intend to interview every single commissioner, every single mayor who is willing to sit down and have a conversation with me and let people know that some people such as yourself are out there willing to help feed families. Because if you're not essential and you've lost your job and you have kids, there are people out there who are desperate. So please talk to us if any, and if there aren't any, then we need to talk about how we need to get the movement going on in Oakland Park to feed those 46,000 families.
Absolutely. So there's, as I had mentioned, I'll give more details. There's a weekly food distribution. It's at Mills Pond Park. Pond Park.
That's inside of Oakland. That's inside of Oakland Park.
It's actually not. It's off of Powerline Road. It's actually in Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors. I think it's in. I have to check. I think it's in Fort Lauderdale, but I could be wrong on that. But it's close. It's not in Oakland Park. I know that. It's just south on Powerline from Oakland Park Boulevard. But it's a combination of the three cities' efforts with Feeding South Florida. It's every Thursday at I believe it's at 9 a.m. and you have to fortunately line up early.
So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah, every Thursday at 9 a.m. at Mills Pond Park. I believe it goes 9 to 11.
Mills Pond Park, and this is tomorrow morning because today is May 13th. Today's a Wednesday, so therefore it's approximately a little bit after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So therefore tomorrow morning, for those of you in Oakland Park who are in need of assistance and support, tomorrow morning at Mills Pond Park, and I will actually look up the address and post it in the description of this video for people who need to be able to put something on the table in the meantime.
Thank you. And the other one I'm familiar with is a little east of there in Oakland Park. It's at a church. They've done feeding, before the pandemic, a really important legacy of feeding. His name is Father Bob, but the church is called Blessed Sacrament. The church is called Blessed Sacrament. I'm sorry I don't have the address, but it's on Oakland Park Boulevard.
Blessed Sacrament, and it's in Oakland Park.
It's in Oakland Park. It's off of Oakland Park Boulevard.
This is Blessed Sacrament Church in Oakland Park, who's also feeding the public,
And
families in need.
they're every Friday at 2 o'clock.
Every Friday at 2 p.m.
Friday at
Every
2
Friday. Just to the best of your knowledge, do the residents need to bring ID? Do they need to be identified, or is it just show up?
I believe at Mills Pond Park they do. I don't think so at the church. The church is, not part of the official city apparatus. I do know that if you do go on, they want you. Here's the thing, though, they do want you to show up in a car.
Okay.
Some people don't have cars, but if you can be with someone who has a car, wear your mask and stuff. You can borrow, get a ride with someone. And the Blessed Sacrament, they feed every other. So if you go on one Friday, you have to wait 2 more Fridays. So you can be fed every other Friday there. The other area, or the other part that I'm familiar with, is I'm a member of Kiwanis, which is a social service, or not social service, like charitable organization.
Yes.
First Zoom meeting this morning at 7:30 in terms of Zoom. But there's a lot of food distribution that goes on through there. And our chief one is what's called the backpack program. Now, this happened again before pandemic. It was long standing, but there's a need for either food or cash donations. And we are connected with the 5 schools. Right now, I think we're connected more with 2 schools than all 5. I'd have to double check that. And what we do is we give bags of food to the schools themselves, and then they distribute it to the needy families. As you may know, a number of families, Oakland Park is not a wealthy city.
What's the average median income out there? What's the median income in Oakland Park?
I don't know that information offhand. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
On that. But there's a correlation between school grades and income. So I know from that, our schools are not all A's and B's. In fact, they're B's and C's. Graded by, that as an educator, but for the general public, our schools are B's and C's. And so there's a relationship. I just don't know it offhand, the median income, but between that, because property taxes and
all connected. Do you know if any of those schools, and pardon me for interrupting, do you know if any of those schools in Oakland Park are part of the distribution centers from Broward County School Board? Because they have certain places that they've chosen, certain schools that they've chosen to distribute food. And if you don't know, it's okay. And the reason I'm asking is because I wanted us to come once again, kind of give a landmark to the people who will eventually see this video about where they can possibly get a meal. Because according to Commissioner Jay Schwartz, he states here live on social media, he says that Pembroke Pines has provided over 2,500 meals a week since the middle of April. Fire department checks in with all vulnerable population centers. So it seems as though if the plan is not in place, because Pembroke Pines is doing it and maybe some other cities are not doing it, and I'm going to either hope and wish that Oakland Park either has it or will have it, some sort of a partnership with the fire department, police department, the school board, because all hands have to be on deck. All hands have to be on deck when it comes to people who don't have jobs and don't have food. And I never thought I'd have this conversation in what's considered the United States a first world country. I'm from the third world. I'm from Latin America. I'm from the Caribbean. And most people, your ancestors came from someplace else. My ancestors came probably forcibly, but my ancestors came from someplace else. But people are coming to the United States for a better opportunity, for a better life. And here it is now, even though I do believe we will get over this, we will overcome it. But there are people literally without jobs and without a notion of where they're going to get the next meal.
Absolutely, and it's terrifying. And so we need to create these support networks, and where they aren't created, they need to be created. I consider myself pretty aware of things. Thank you for telling me that. I didn't know that Broward, I missed that, that Broward Schools was doing, had designated schools for dropouts. I'm not saying they don't. For one of our 5, really 6 schools in Oakland Park, I'm just not aware of that. But that's something I can look up, and we need a coordinated response between local, like county, city, and then you have the private nonprofits like Kiwanis. And what is the, right? We all depend on like the religious community, right? The churches, the synagogues, the mosques, and what are they doing? And together, and then like the big Feeding South Florida and the other ones, Food for the Poor. And so all together, you have this human service network. A very nice thing, by the way, a friend of mine, Commissioner Nan Rich on the Broward County Commission, um, uh, I think yours is Commissioner Sharif, but Commissioner Rich, just north of you, her staff put out a she put out a human service directory in Broward County. That's you know, and we need to continue to build that in terms of crisis. And we're talking about food, but we also need to talk about housing because we have no formal homeless shelters in Oakland Park. We have homeless individuals, and with social distancing, I volunteered at Broward Partnership for the Homeless, you know, which is the central shelter in Broward, which is on Sunrise. And for social distancing, like the men, for example, they're in bunk, not even, well, I guess it's bunk beds. They're in like barrack style housing. There's like maybe 30 of them in a big room. They can't eat, they have to continue to spread them out. And for the people that are on the street, because some people choose to be on the street or some might come in, they're actually encouraging them. They're trying to find actually like some, I think they actually have found some motels or hotels for a lot of the homeless because you have to social distance. And
is there,
yeah.
pardon me, is there a notable homeless population in Oakland Park?
You know, I don't have an official count. I will tell you that we do have a deputy. So we have 90, we contract with BSO for our police force. And one of them, Deputy Lauren Apollo, who's terrific, she's designated in part as our, I forget her exact title, but it's like homeless outreach coordinator. So we have enough homeless that it has warranted from the BSO perspective to have a homeless outreach. So I don't have the exact numbers. I frankly, possibly she keeps a count, but I think we all know there's always an undercount. So I don't have the exact number. I don't have a number right now for the homeless, estimated homeless. But
homelessness is one of the social issues I would like to have the Broward Social Network address, along with other social elements such as trafficking. And I kind of don't like to talk about it because, you know, I've learned about this incredible underground of people who are being trafficked, and it's just kind of insane, you know, in a country with so many resources and so many opportunities, and there are people who are living this underlife of pain and suffering. So I'm going to challenge you, because I know that you're going to win. I have faith in you. You know, we're people, we're very personable. We're people who believe in education. We believe in humanity. So I do believe that the constituents will see that and will vote for you come November 3rd. And when you are commissioner, I'm going to ask that you come back to the Broward Social Network, and let's talk about homelessness. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about human trafficking. Let's talk about healthcare, because there are certain things, in my very humble opinion, because I don't know everything, we should not be having these problems in this great country. We should not be having these problems in this great country. There's just too many resources in the United States, in the great United States of America, for people to be going through what we're going through. I mean, this is the land of opportunity. This is why you're here, probably several generations removed, why your ancestors came here. And this is why many people come here, the land of opportunity for a better life. And if, for example, the United States, you know, the laws of physics is whatever comes up, whatever goes up must come down. If, for example, the United States falls apart, then our children and our grandchildren will have to look for a better life elsewhere. That's just what we do. We migrate for a better life. And there should be no blame, no shame on that. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of extend an invitation to you after your election on November 4th, and whenever you're ready, because you're going to probably celebrate, because I do believe that you're going to win. You have a good chance of getting to be known by the public, and be received and voted by the public. And there's just a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of work that needs to be done. So in the interest of time, oh my goodness, time flies. I can talk to you for forever. Talk to us about a closing message. Give us a closing message. And then I need for the public to know, how can they reach you if they have any questions? How can they reach you to know a little bit more about you, even though we fleshed out quite a few topics? And you can remain engaged with them. Okay, we are now in the month of May, June, all the way down to November. How can they reach you? And what is your closing message before we close this interview?
Great. Well, first I want to thank you, Ted, and I pledged to you, I think it was on air before, I think it was on air that I will be your, no, I think it was before, that I'll be your first interview after my election, if I'm fortunate to be elected. So
thank you.
I'm now publicly committing, so
Thank
there's
you.
a good test that I keep my word, and I will.
There you go. There you go. Thank you so much.
My word. Yeah, I think my closing, well, first let me give you my, how to reach me, and I'll give a closing marks. So my website is my name. It's Mitch Rosenwald, ROSENWALD. So MitchRosenwald.com. And then my email is there. It's just mitch@mitchrosenwald.com. And also you can just call me or text me. It's 954
954
253
253 253
5641.
5641. That's 954-253-5641. In order for you to reach Dr. Mitch Rosenwald, professional social worker, professor at Barry University, and candidate for commissioner in the wonderful city of Oakland Park. His website is mitchrosenwald.com. That is MITCHROSENWALD.com. And the email is mitch@mitchrosenwald.com, correct?
Yes, sir. And for my closing message, I am here with you in spirit, and hopefully I'll get to meet many of you as we in Broward and in the city, all of our cities, not just Oakland Park or Pembroke Pines, as we all are in this together. I mean, this is a crisis. This is a calamity, right? This is a disaster that we haven't seen since hardly anyone was alive, right? Who was alive in 1918. This was 102 years ago was the last pandemic like this. And so I first want you to know that I am with you, and we will get through this together, and we will solve problems. And if the solutions don't exist, we will create them.
Look for them together as well.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you for this opportunity again. As I told you, I'm a social worker. I'm running for office with the ethics and the critical thinking and the heart of a social worker. And I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible. Please spread the word. You know how to get a hold of me. And I will say, Ted, you and I talked last week. I'm glad to come back on for specific topics, like as you discuss, child abuse or something like that, so we get more focused on specific topics. I'm glad to come back as a panelist. But again, just thank you all for this opportunity. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dr. Mitch Rosenwald, today is Wednesday, May 13th, and the time is approximately 2:25 p.m. in the afternoon. It was a pleasure and an honor to have you as a guest on the Broward Social Network. I do believe good things happen to good people. You are academically, professionally, intellectually, spiritually, psychologically prepared to lead the city of Oakland Park. And I'm asking for the voters of Oakland Park to please remember the date, November 3rd, and look for Mitch Rosenwald on the ballot. And folks are saying hello on social media. Hello there, Ivy Robinson. Hello there, Eddie Butler. Hello there, Commissioner Jay Schwartz. Thank you very much for signing in. And I thank you very much for your time. That's your most valuable asset, and you shared that with us today. Thank you very much. Please come back sometime soon, and I'm looking for a full victory on November 3rd. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.